The other thing to check before we output is to do a full pre-flight. So down at the very bottom of the screen here, it will tell us either that we have no errors and we get a green light, which is obviously good, or you might have in here one or more errors. So first of all, we need to inspect this. I'm going to double left click in here. This will open up the pre-flight panel. And in my case, it doesn't flag any errors, but it's key to note what is InDesign actually checking for and what does it class as an error. By default, InDesign will look at overset text. It will look for missing fonts, missing links to images, images that need updating. So those are the kind of things it classes as an error. It will not look for the quality of an image. So we really need to create our own in here. We're using basic working. If I go to the panel flyout menu, I can choose define profiles. In the dialog box that pops up on screen, here I can stick with basic because it will check all the things that I've just mentioned. But if I go down to the bottom, I can click to add a new one and I'll call this Pro Print because this is going to be checked for professional print output. Lower down then we have in here links. So it's going to look for any links that are missing or modified. That's our image links. Any inaccessible URLs, if you've put any web addresses in there and it can't find them on the internet, InDesign will actually check that for you from inside of InDesign, providing, of course, you have an internet connection. Then if I collapse this and go down to images and objects, we need to go to image resolution, but I'm going to expand the toggle on this and I'm going to turn on image resolution, scroll down, and you'll see in here that it's going to check that our color images have a minimum resolution of 250 ppi. Now, whenever we're aiming for print, if you can, aim for 300. Certainly professional print output will require you to attain at least 300. So in here, these are not going to be good enough. We need to swipe over them, type in 300. It is highly likely that the vast majority, if not everything image-wise in your document is going to be a color image. You may have grayscale images in there. If you wish to, could type in 300. I'm going to leave 1-bit images in there set to a resolution of 800. Scrolling down, I'm going to turn on the checkbox for non-proportional scaling of placed objects, which basically in plain English means that if you've stretched your image widthways but not stretched the height as well, you have non-proportionally scaled. So it will check for those things. And then if I turn on the checkbox for minimum stroke weight, I'm going to expand that open and then keep scrolling down. Here, it's going to limit us to a minimum stroke weight of 0.125 points. So things to be aware of. If you have a very thin stroke weight, that stroke is white in color, but it's set against a dark black background, for example. When it's printed out, the natural process of the print hitting the page, the ink will seep into and spread out in small amounts, barely noticeable to the eye. But in the case where you have a very thin stroke, that ink may bleed into that tiny region and it may make your strokes unrecognizable once printed. So to limit that, that's why InDesign is setting the minimum stroke weight to 0.15 points. Just so you know, in the menus inside of InDesign, the lowest it goes down to as a preset is 0.25 points. I'll scroll down the list. We have text, expand that open, and then just make sure it is going to check for things like overset text, missing fonts. And with that done, then I'll go down to the bottom and I'll click on save. That saves the options in here. I'll click OK. And then you would expect InDesign to start checking. Well, it doesn't. It still keeps using the basic working profile. If I click on the drop-down menu, you have to then afterwards click on Pro Print. And then you may find, as I do here, that I have an error. So in the upper section at the top, it tells me that it relates to images and objects. I'll expand that one open. This is related to image resolution. So expand that one here. It's the file called Calendar Shots. Now this is on page 3. So if I left click on that, it takes me to that page. It centers that image on screen. And here underneath in the bottom section, if it's not visible, you can expand it. It tells me that the problem is the color image must be 300 ppi, which we've just set. It has an effective resolution of 256. So it even tells you how to sort this in here. You might have to scroll down to see the entire solution. But essentially, we either need to shrink this image down in size to increase the PPI count, or perhaps if that's not plausible, we'd have to pick a different image. So first things to try out with that frame selected, go to the properties panel and go down to frame fitting options and choose fill frame proportionally. If that doesn't work, then you could always go to File, you can choose Place. In the links folder from here then, I have another one in here that's called Cal Cover. It's the same shot but a different file and the JPEG version. So I'll choose that one, click on Open, and you'll notice that that doesn't have the same issue. Again, I could always choose to fill frame proportionally just to fit as much of that there as possible, but now that has been resolved, the error has disappeared. So Preflight is an excellent way of getting InDesign to do all that repetitive, time-consuming checking of your document.